A miracle birth, a finish for photo finishing, the arrest of a rock superstar, and a bold new leap for local TV news. Those were the headlines this week and years past on Rochester's first TV station. Here's News 8 Now's Dave McKinley back with News 8 Then.
10 years ago this week, when we aired our first report about something called mad cow disease, the $100 bill got a facelift, so did Betty Crocker. And at Strong Hospital, a baby was born under most unusual circumstances.
The birth has made headlines all over the world.
The babe's mother, known to this day only as Kathy, had for 9 years been in a chronic vegetative state when she became pregnant. The father, a nursing home worker named John Horace, was later convicted of rape. Kathy died a year later, and somewhere in another part of our state, a boy has turned 10, perhaps still unaware of the circumstances which brought about his being this week in 1996. 20 years ago this week,
Kodak assembled all 650 employees at its photo finishing plant to tell them their jobs are going to be eliminated by the end of the year. For the first time in the company's history, customers' pictures will no longer be processed in Rochester.
Everybody's scared, including myself.
Of course, they wouldn't have known the half of it now, would they have? This week in 1986. 30 years ago this week, after playing the War Memorial, rock superstar David Bowie suddenly found himself required to make a return engagement in Rochester across the street at the Hall of Justice.
At 2:25 this morning, a city undercover detective and state investigator converged on Bowie's suite at the Americana Hotel,
where they found him in possession of 6 ounces of pot. Facing up to 15 years, Bowie got probation instead. But it also turns out that a second rock star was arrested with Bowie that night. It's just that nobody could have known it because it would be a while longer before he'd make a name for himself, and under a different name at that. So this week's News 8 Then pop quiz concerns David Bowie's co-defendant, James Osterberg Jr., whom you'd come to know better as whom, in the years following his arrest in Rochester this week in 1976. 40 years ago this week, and after so many other innovations as Rochester's first TV station, WROC was once again on the cutting edge. It was Pablo Picasso who once said, "For a long time I limited myself to one color as a form of discipline." Well, perhaps to get it right, for 17 years we had limited ourselves to 2, black and white, until this week in 1966, when we became the first in town to bring you local news footage shot in color. The rest, as they say, is history, or as we like to say, was News 8 Then.
This is News 8 Now.
Here's the answer to this week's News 8 Then pop quiz concerning a co-defendant of rock star David Bowie when he was arrested in Rochester on drug charges 30 years ago this week. One of Bowie's entourage was booked under the name James Osterberg Jr. It would be years later that Osterberg would go on to stardom himself under the stage name Iggy Pop.